The first thing that hit me wasn't the sight, it was the smell. 40 years of trapped air, dust that's turned soft as flour, and something underneath it all that's almost sweet. Old pine baking under a roof that's cooked in the sun since before I was born. The door to this attic had been nailed shut, not finish nails through the trim into the jamb back in the early 80s and walked away, and nobody opened it again until I pulled that trim off with a flat bar this past spring. The realtor told me the whole third floor was unusable. The inspector wrote, "Recommend no access, structural, unknown." Everyone said, "Tear the roof off, cap it flat, forget the space even exists." I stood at the bottom of those stairs looking up at a slice of light coming through a gable window. Nobody had cleaned since Reagan, and I thought, no, not this one. I'm going to show you how I turned a sealed attic, the room everybody wrote off, into the best room in this whole house. 11 weeks, right around $38,000 all in, and a window seat built by a man who's been dead 100 years. The house is a farmhouse built in 1887 up here in the Vermont hills by a family named Corliss who ran sheep on the land behind it. Big square thing, 2 full floors in this walk-up attic under a steep gable roof. That steep pitch is the whole reason we're here. It gives you real ceiling height up top, 7.5 feet at the ridge. Most attics you're crawling. This one you can stand up and live in. Now here's what I pieced together. The Corliss family used that attic as sleeping quarters for the hired hands back when the farm was working. Bunks along the knee walls, a stovepipe running up through the middle. I found the ghost marks of those bunks still on the boards. Rectangles of cleaner wood where a frame had blocked the dust for decades. You can read a room like that if you slow down. Then the farm went under in the 30s. The house changed hands a few times, and somewhere around 1982, the last owners sealed it off to save on heat. Cheaper to close a room than warm it, so they nailed the door and let it sleep. That's why nobody's touched it. Not neglect, really, just forgetting. And forgetting, it turns out, is a kinder thing to a house than most people realize. So I pull those nails, I climb up, and I let my eyes adjust, and I'll be straight with you. The first 10 minutes, I thought maybe everybody was right. The insulation, what little there was, had slumped into the eaves and gone to dust. There were water stains on the underside of the roof boards, long rusty streaks running down from where the flashing around the chimney had failed decades back. Mouse nests, a dead bird mummified on the sill. And that chimney, well, an old brick center chimney, had a crack running up through 3 courses that you could slide a nickel into. But I kept looking. Because the smell of rot and the look of rot aren't the same thing. Rot has a wet, black, giving feel to it. Old water stains are just a diary of trouble that already passed through. I got up on a stepladder and I pushed my awl into the roof rafters right where the water had been running. And it stopped hard, solid. That water damage was surface staining, 40 years old, long dried out. The leak had been slow and the wood had shed it. I went rafter to rafter, probing every foot, mapping the soft from the sound with a lumber crayon so I wasn't guessing later. 22 rafters, 20 of them perfect. These rafters are full dimension, rough sawn spruce, 2x8s that actually measure 2 inches by 8 inches, not the 1.5 inch stuff you buy today. They cut these at a local mill and they oversized everything because that's what you did when the wood was cheap and the labor was you. Then there's a stamp burned into one of them, a mill mark, a little diamond, and I left it showing. You don't paint over a signature. Then I found the thing that made me sit down on the floor and just look for a while. Along the north knee wall, half buried under collapsed insulation, was a built-in window seat. A real one. Frame and panel front, a lift-up lid on the bench, and flanking it 2 little cupboards with beadboard doors. Pine. Hand-planed. And when I ran my hand along the top edge of that lid, I felt the tool marks and the little scallops a wooden smoothing plane leaves when a man's pushing it by hand. I pulled one of the cupboard doors open, and inside, tucked in a corner, was a child's wooden spinning top and a tin of shoe tacks gone to rust. Somebody's kid played up here while the hired men slept. That's the kind of thing that stops the job for 10 minutes. Somebody built this right the first time. My job is to not be the guy who ruins it. The water damage tally came out better than I feared. About $400 in roof sheathing to replace over by the chimney where the leak had softened 2 boards. The rafters, every one of them, but the 2 I flagged sound, and those 2 I didn't replace. I sistered a short length of new spruce alongside the weak spots so the original stays in place doing its job. The chimney crack was the real number, the 3,000 to have a mason reline it with a stainless liner and repoint the top because I was not going to skip that. You don't leave a cracked chimney in a room where people are going to sleep. A crack like that lets combustion gases wander into the framing, and that's how you end up with a story on the news. Now the bones, this is where it got interesting. An attic floor and a bedroom floor are two different animals. The Corliss family used this space, sure, but for hired men and light storage, and the floor joists were 2x6s, and they'd been sized to hold up a plaster ceiling below and not much more. If I'm going to put a real bedroom up here, a bed, a dresser, people walking around at 2 in the morning, that floor needs to carry more weight, and just as important, it needs to not bounce. Bounce is what tells your feet a floor is cheap, even when it's plenty strong. So I sistered every joist. That means I ran a new 2x8 alongside each old 2x6, glued with construction adhesive and through-bolted with half-inch carriage bolts every 16 inches, so the two of them share the load and act like one deeper, stronger beam. The trick is you can't just lay the new board loose next to the old one. They have to be locked tight so they flex as a unit. Doubled the stiffness of that floor for about $1,100 in lumber, and a long weekend of my back telling me I'm 56. I laid a marble on the deck when I was done, and it sat still. That's the only inspection that matters to me. Then the collar ties. Up in a steep roof like this, you got the two sides of the roof leaning against each other at the ridge. In over 130 years, they'd spread. Not a lot, about 1.25 inches out at the top of the walls. I measured it with a story pole and a level corner to corner, so I knew exactly what I was fighting. A roof that's spreading is a roof that's slowly opening up, pushing the walls out at the bottom, and I wanted to close it and hold it. Here's where I'll own a mistake. I went to jack the ridge back true with a couple of screw jacks set on a beam across the floor, and I got impatient. Tried to bring it a ½ inch in one afternoon, and the whole roof groaned at me. A deep, unhappy sound, wood complaining across a century, and a plaster crack opened downstairs in a second-floor bedroom. That one's on me. Old wood moves slow or it doesn't move at all. You've got to coax it 1/16 at a time over a week, letting the fibers relax between turns. So I backed off, gave the jacks a quarter turn every morning with my coffee, and pulled it true over 8 days with new collar ties bolted across its ceiling height to lock the gain. Cost me $100 in plaster patch downstairs to fix my own hurry. Cheap tuition. The gable walls I reinforced too, tying the new framing back into the old top plates, and I framed proper knee walls at 42 inches, which is where the ceiling starts to get low anyway. Behind those knee walls, you get storage. Dead triangle space that's no good for standing, but perfect for stashing off-season stuff. I built little hatch doors into them, hinged and trimmed so the space stays useful instead of sealed. Never waste that. That's another closet you didn't pay to build. Now the invisible part, and in an attic, the invisible part is everything, because an attic wants to be an oven in July and an icebox in January. The old wiring up here was 2 ancient runs of knob and tube. That's the cloth-wrapped wiring on porcelain knobs they used a century ago. Beautiful workmanship, honestly. Every splice soldered and taped by hand, but it's got no ground. The insulation's gone brittle as an old newspaper. And you cannot bury it in modern insulation without it cooking and starting a fire. So all of it came out and got replaced with new 12-gauge. I ran circuits for lights, for outlets every 12 feet like code wants, and a dedicated line for a little heat pump head. I also fished a low-voltage run for reading lights over where the bed would go, because you plan the light for how people actually live, not for an empty room. Call it $2,200 in electrical, then insulation, which is the make or break of this whole room. I used closed cell spray foam right against the underside of the roof deck, up in the rafter bays, 2 inches deep. That does two things. It seals the space airtight so you're not bleeding heat through 1,000 little gaps, and it moves the whole attic inside the warm envelope of the house instead of leaving it out in the cold. The old way was to insulate the attic floor and leave the roof cold. But then you can't live up there. Bring the roof line into the envelope and the whole space becomes real square footage. Foam's not cheap. That was $4,100. But in Vermont, it's the difference between a room you use and a room you regret. And the timing fought me the whole way. I was spraying that foam in the second week of November, and the temperature outside dropped to 19 degrees overnight. Foam doesn't like to cure cold. Spray it below its window and it won't bond, just sits there gummy and useless, and you've wasted a couple $1,000s in an afternoon. So I ran 2 propane heaters up there for 2 days straight, hung a thermometer where I could watch it, and held the space at 60 until it kicked off right. That's Vermont for you. Winter doesn't wait for you to finish. It just leans on the door and waits for you to make a mistake. For heat and cooling, I put in a single ductless head on the gable wall. Quiet, efficient, and it doesn't eat any of the room's precious low ceiling the way ductwork would. Little plumbing, too. I ran a supply and a drain up the chimney chase for a small wet bar in case somebody wants to make this a proper guest suite someday. That plumbing run was about $1,400, mostly labor, because getting a drain to fall right through an old house is a puzzle every single time. You need a 1/4 inch of drop per foot, and old houses don't hand you clean, straight paths. I stole every inch through the chase and behind the knee wall. Then the fun part finishes. This is where the room stops being a project and starts being a place. The floor first. Under the dust and the old insulation, the original attic floorboards were wide pine, some of them 11 inches across, single boards, the kind of tree you can't buy anymore because it doesn't grow in a hurry and nobody waits that long. About 1/3 were too far gone, cupped and split where the leak had lived. But 2/3 were solid, so I pulled the whole floor up, numbered each board with chalk so I could put them back in order, sorted the good from the bad, patched in the failures with matching reclaimed pine I keep in my barn for exactly this, and relaid the good boards over rosin paper to quiet the squeaks. Sanded light, just enough to clean them and knock the high spots, and finished with a hard wax oil so you can still feel the grain and every dent 130 years put there. Those boards cost me nothing but the time. You can't put a price on a floor that old. The walls and ceiling I did in painted tongue and groove boards following the slope of the roof. That gives you that snug cabin feeling that a flat sheet of drywall never will, and it suits the age of the house. I ran the boards vertical on the knee walls and up the rake so the lines carry your eye to the ridge and make the room feel taller than it is. Warm white so the light bounces around, because light was the other problem. That single grimy gable window wasn't enough on the brightest day of the year, so I put in 2 skylights, one on each roof slope up near the ridge where the ceiling's tall, flashed with a proper step kit and ice and water shield underneath because a skylight is just a leak waiting to happen if you rush it. And the day I cut those in and pulled the sheathing back and the sun came pouring down into a space that had been dark for 40 years, I stood there in the light, with sawdust hanging in the air, and I didn't say anything for a minute. Some days, the job gives you something back. That was one of them. And the window seat. My favorite thing in this whole house. I took it out careful, labeled every joint, and brought it down to the shop on a moving blanket like it was made of glass. Stripped 100 years of grime off it with nothing harsher than mineral spirits and 0 and steel wool, working with the grain because I wanted to keep the patina, the wear. The story is not scrub it down to something that looks new and dead. One of the beadboard doors was cracked clean across, so I made a new one to match. Hand-planed the beads myself with an old beading plane, same profile as the original, and I'll tell you, it took me 3 tries to get the spacing right on a cut a man did in one confident pass in 1887. Rebuilt the lid where it had warped, put new hinges on it, forged to look like the old ones, and set it back under the north window, right where the Corliss family left it. New cushion on top, wool-filled, deep enough to nap on. That's the heart of the room. Everything else I built around it, literally. I set the bed placement and the floor layout to keep that seat in the best light. So let me walk you through her. Finished. From the road, the house sits the way she has since 1887, but now those 2 new gable windows and the skylights catch the light instead of staring back dark and dead. The roof's tight, the fresh cedar shingles over the chimney blending toward the old, and the chimney stands true and repointed against the sky. You come in the front, up the original stairs. I rebuilt 3 treads that were worn through, but kept the rail my hand followed the whole job. And you climb toward light instead of away from it now. At the top, the landing opens into one long room under the peak, wide pine floors glowing warm underfoot, the whole ceiling following the roof line in soft white boards that draw your eye clean up to the ridge. Down the middle where you can stand full height, that's the sleeping area, with a skylight set right over the bed so you fall asleep looking at stars and wake up to a square of morning sky. Over by the chimney chase, the little wet bar tucks in clean under a shelf of that same reclaimed pine, ready to be a coffee station or a guest kitchenette. Its plumbing hidden inside the old brick run where nobody will ever see it. Under the north gable, the restored window seat sits in its own pool of light, lid closed, cushion soft, the new door I made blending right in with the ones from 1887. You'd have to know to find it, and even then you'd have to look twice. And then you step to the window over that seat and look out, and you see the whole valley and the roof line of the house dropping away below you, tight and true. The best view in the building, and nobody knew it was here. Then back down those stairs and out to the road where the old girl finally looks awake in every window. All in, $38,600, 11 weeks, and a room everybody said didn't exist is now the one everybody wants to sleep in. Somebody sealed this room up to save a few dollars on heat, and in doing it, they saved it. Kept the weather off, kept the hands out, kept the light off that pine so it never bleached. They didn't mean to leave me a gift, but they did. A window seat built by a man whose name I'll never know, hiding in the dark for 40 years, waiting for somebody to open the door and let the light back in. That's the thing about these old houses. The good stuff doesn't disappear, it just waits. Next one's a different animal entirely. It's a stone house down in the valley about 1820s, laid up dry by somebody who knew rock, and the whole back wall has bowed out 4 inches and started letting water into the cellar. Everybody says the wall's finished, haul it away by the load. I've got a hunch there's a way to pull it back true, stone by stone, without taking it down. We'll find out together.